Welcome, seekers of truth and understanding. Today, we explore a question that has puzzled philosophers, mystics, and scientists for millennia. Can our minds truly perceive reality, or are we trapped in a world of illusion? This inquiry strikes at the very heart of our existence. It challenges our fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality and our place within it. As we navigate this profound terrain, we'll uncover layers of perception, cognition, and consciousness that shape our understanding of the world around us. Let's begin by considering what we mean by reality. At first glance, the concept seems straightforward. Reality is what exists, what's true, what's actually there. It's the world we see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. It's the ground beneath our feet, the air we breathe, the people we interact with. But is it really that simple? Our perception of reality is filtered through our senses, processed by our brains, and interpreted through the lens of our past experiences, beliefs, and expectations. This means that what we perceive as reality is not a direct, unmediated experience of the world as it truly is, but rather a construction of our minds. Think about it this way. When you look at a tree, you don't see the tree itself. You see light reflected off the tree, captured by your eyes, converted into electrical signals, and processed by your brain. Your mind then interprets these signals based on your previous experiences with trees, your knowledge of what trees are, and your current context and state of mind. This process happens so quickly and seamlessly that we're rarely aware of it. We assume that our perception of the tree is a direct, accurate representation of reality. But is it? Consider color, for instance. We perceive the world as filled with vibrant hues, but color doesn't exist in the external world. What exists are different wavelengths of light. Our brains interpret these wavelengths as colors. Other animals with different visual systems perceive these same wavelengths very differently. So which perception is real?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
This isn't just true for vision. All of our senses work by translating external stimuli into a form our brains can interpret. The sound of a bird singing, the smell of fresh bread, the taste of sweet fruit. All of these are interpretations our brains make based on sensory input. They're not direct experiences of reality, but rather our mind's representation of reality. But the influence of our minds on our perception of reality goes far beyond just sensory interpretation. Our beliefs, expectations, and past experiences profoundly shape how we perceive and interpret the world around us. Have you ever noticed how two people can witness the same event and come away with completely different interpretations of what happened? This isn't because one person is right and the other is wrong. It's because each person's mind is filtering and interpreting the event through their own unique lens of experiences, beliefs, and expectations. This phenomenon is known as cognitive bias, and it affects every aspect of our perception and decision-making. We tend to see what we expect to see, hear what we expect to hear, and interpret events in ways that confirm our existing beliefs. This isn't because we're intentionally being dishonest or selective. It's simply how our minds work. For example, if you believe that people are generally kind and trustworthy, you're more likely to interpret ambiguous actions as well-intentioned. If you believe the world is a dangerous place, you're more likely to perceive threats in your environment, even when none exist. These biases aren't just minor quirks of perception. They fundamentally shape our experience of reality. They influence what we pay attention to, how we interpret events, what we remember, and how we make decisions. In a very real sense, they create the reality we experience. But if our perception of reality is so heavily influenced by our minds, does that mean that objective reality doesn't exist? Are we all just living in our own personal illusions? This is where things get truly fascinating. While it's true that our perception of reality is heavily influenced by our minds, that doesn't mean that there isn't an objective reality underlying our perceptions. It just means that accessing that reality directly is incredibly challenging, perhaps even impossible. Think of it like this. Imagine you're wearing a pair of glasses with tinted lenses. Everything you see is colored by those lenses. You can't take the glasses off. They're a fundamental part of how you see. That's similar to how our minds work. Our perceptions, beliefs, and experiences are like those tinted lenses, coloring everything we see and experience. But just because we can't take off the glasses doesn't mean there isn't a world beyond them. It just means that we have to be aware of the lenses we're looking through and account for their influence. This is where the practice of mindfulness and self-awareness becomes crucial. By cultivating awareness of our own thought processes, beliefs, and biases, we can start to recognize the ways in which our minds are shaping our perception of reality. We can begin to distinguish between the raw data of our experience and the interpretations our minds automatically attach to that data. This practice isn't about trying to eliminate our mind's influence on our perception. That's neither possible nor desirable. Our mind's ability to interpret and make sense of raw sensory data is what allows us to function in the world. Without it, we'd be overwhelmed by a chaotic flood of meaningless sensations. Instead, the goal is to become aware of the process, to recognize that what we perceive as reality is not a direct, unmediated experience of the world, but rather a construction of our minds based on sensory input, past experiences, beliefs, and expectations. This awareness opens up new possibilities. It allows us to question our automatic interpretations, to consider alternative perspectives, to hold our beliefs more lightly. It gives us the freedom to consciously shape our experience of reality rather than being unconsciously controlled by it. But this raises another profound question. If our minds are so influential in shaping our perception of reality, is there any way to see beyond our own mental constructs? Is there any way to perceive reality as it truly is? This question has been at the heart of spiritual and philosophical inquiry for thousands of years. Many traditions speak of states of consciousness in which the veil of illusion is lifted, revealing the true nature of reality. In Buddhism, this state is called enlightenment. In Hinduism, it's known as self-realization. Western mystical traditions speak of union with the divine. While the language and concepts differ, these traditions all point to a state of consciousness that transcends ordinary perception, a direct experience of reality unmediated by the conceptual mind. But what does this mean in practical terms? How can we, in our everyday lives, move closer to perceiving reality as it truly is? The first step is to recognize the nature of our ordinary perception, to understand that what we typically think of as reality is actually a mental construct, a story our minds are telling us about the world. This doesn't mean that our ordinary perception is wrong or worthless. It's an incredibly sophisticated and useful tool that allows us to navigate the world. But it's not the whole picture. It's a map, not the territory. Once we recognize this, we can start to loosen our attachment to our perceptions and beliefs. We can hold them more lightly, recognizing them as useful tools rather than absolute truths. This opens up space for new perceptions, new understandings. We can also practice expanding our awareness beyond our ordinary conceptual thinking. Meditation, for example, allows us to observe our thoughts and perceptions without getting caught up in them. It cultivates a spacious awareness that can hold our experiences without immediately categorizing or judging them. Another powerful practice is to regularly challenge our assumptions and seek out different perspectives. By exposing ourselves to ideas and viewpoints that differ from our own, we can start to see the limitations of our current way of perceiving the world. We can also pay closer attention to our direct, moment-to-moment experience before our minds have a chance to interpret and categorize it. This is the practice of bare attention in Buddhism, or what some contemporary teachers call clear seeing. Try this. For just a moment, drop all your concepts and ideas about what you're experiencing right now. Let go of names, categories, judgments. What do you actually experience in this moment before your mind tells you what it means? This direct experience, free from conceptual overlay, is perhaps the closest we can come in our ordinary state of consciousness to perceiving reality as it truly is. It's a glimpse beyond the veil of our mental constructs, a taste of the vast, interconnected, ever-changing flow of existence that underlies our conceptual understanding of the world. But even this direct experience is filtered through our sensory and nervous systems. It's still not an absolutely direct perception of reality. So is such a thing even possible? This brings us to one of the deepest mysteries of existence. Many spiritual traditions speak of a state of consciousness in which the separation between perceiver and perceived dissolves. In this state, often described as mystical union or non-dual awareness, there is no separate self to perceive an external reality. There is only reality experiencing itself. From this perspective, the question, "Can our mind see true reality?" becomes meaningless. There is no separate mind to see, no separate reality to be seen. There is only the seamless, undivided totality of existence. This state is not something that can be grasped by the conceptual mind. It can't be explained or understood in ordinary terms. It can only be experienced directly. And even then, as soon as we try to conceptualize or describe the experience, we've already stepped back into the world of mental constructs and separation. So where does this leave us in our everyday lives? Are we doomed to live in illusion, never able to perceive reality as it truly is? Not at all. While we may not be able to permanently transcend our mental constructs and directly perceive absolute reality, we can certainly expand our awareness and deepen our understanding. We can recognize the constructed nature of our ordinary perception and hold it more lightly. We can cultivate practices that allow us to see beyond our habitual thought patterns and experience the world more directly. Most importantly, we can approach life with an attitude of openness, curiosity, and humility. We can recognize that our current understanding, no matter how sophisticated or well-reasoned, is always limited and partial. There is always more to discover, always deeper levels of reality to explore. This attitude of open inquiry, of always being willing to question our assumptions and expand our understanding, is perhaps the truest path to perceiving reality. It's not about arriving at a final, absolute understanding, but about continually deepening and refining our perception. In this sense, the journey to perceive true reality is never-ending. It's a constant process of expanding awareness, challenging assumptions, and opening to new possibilities. And in this ongoing journey lies the true adventure of consciousness, the profound joy of discovery that makes life endlessly fascinating and meaningful. So as we move through our lives, let's hold our perceptions and beliefs lightly. Let's remain open to new experiences and perspectives. Let's cultivate practices that allow us to see beyond our habitual thought patterns. And let's approach each moment with wonder and curiosity, recognizing that reality is always more vast, more complex, and more amazing than our minds can fully comprehend. In doing so, we open ourselves to ever deeper levels of understanding and experience. We may not be able to see absolute reality with our minds, but we can certainly expand our perception far beyond its ordinary limits. And in that expansion lies the potential for profound wisdom, compassion, and joy. Remember, the goal is not to arrive at a final, complete understanding of reality. Such a thing may not even be possible given the limitations of our human minds. Instead, the goal is to continually expand our awareness, to peel back layer after layer of illusion, to move ever closer to a direct experience of the profound mystery of existence. This is the true spiritual journey, not a destination to be reached, but an ongoing process of awakening. It's a journey that never ends, because reality itself is infinite in its depth and complexity. There is always more to discover, always new levels of understanding to reach. So let's embrace this journey with open hearts and minds. Let's approach each moment as an opportunity to see beyond our habitual perceptions, to glimpse the deeper reality that underlies our ordinary experience. In doing so, we open ourselves to the profound wonder and beauty of existence and to the limitless potential of our own consciousness. As we continue our exploration of perception and reality, let's delve deeper into the nature of consciousness itself. Our consciousness is the medium through which we experience everything: our thoughts, emotions, sensations, and our perception of the world around us. But what exactly is consciousness, and how does it relate to our perception of reality? Consciousness is perhaps the most fundamental aspect of our existence, yet it remains one of the greatest mysteries in science and philosophy. We know we are conscious. We have subjective experiences, thoughts, feelings. But how does this consciousness arise? How does it relate to the physical world and our brains? These questions form what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. From a scientific perspective, consciousness appears to be intimately linked to the brain. Changes in brain activity correspond to changes in conscious experience. Damage to certain areas of the brain can dramatically alter a person's consciousness. Yet, despite tremendous advances in neuroscience, we still don't understand how the physical processes in the brain give rise to subjective experience. This gap between our understanding of the physical brain and our subjective experience is known as the explanatory gap. How does the firing of neurons, no matter how complex, give rise to the felt experience of seeing a sunset, feeling joy, or pondering our own existence? This remains a profound mystery. Some scientists and philosophers argue that consciousness is an emergent property of complex information processing systems like our brains. Others suggest that consciousness might be a fundamental aspect of reality, as basic as space, time, or matter. Some even propose that consciousness might be all that truly exists, with the physical world being a kind of shared dream or simulation. These different perspectives on consciousness have profound implications for how we understand reality and our place within it. If consciousness is merely an emergent property of brain activity, then our subjective experience might be seen as a kind of epiphenomenon, a byproduct of physical processes without any deeper significance. But if consciousness is fundamental to reality, then our subjective experience might be seen as a direct participation in the deepest nature of existence. Interestingly, many spiritual and mystical traditions have long held that consciousness is indeed fundamental to reality. In these views, what we typically think of as reality, the physical world of objects and events, is seen as a kind of dream or illusion created by consciousness, Our individual consciousness is seen as a localized expression of a universal consciousness or awareness that underlies all of existence. This perspective aligns in intriguing ways with some interpretations of quantum physics. In quantum theory, the act of observation appears to play a crucial role in determining the behavior of quantum systems. Some interpret this to mean that consciousness itself plays a fundamental role in shaping reality at its most basic level. But regardless of the ultimate nature of consciousness, it's clear that our conscious experience profoundly shapes our perception of reality. Our consciousness is not just a passive receiver of information from the world. It actively constructs our experience, filtering, interpreting, and giving meaning to the raw data of sensation. This active role of consciousness in shaping our experience is evident in phenomena like attention and expectation. What we pay attention to literally shapes our reality. If you're focused on looking for red objects, suddenly you'll notice red things everywhere that you might have overlooked before. Your conscious focus has altered your perception of reality. Similarly, our expectations powerfully influence our perceptions. In psychology, this is known as top-down processing. Our brains are constantly making predictions about what we're going to experience based on past experiences and current context. These predictions shape what we actually perceive, often causing us to see what we expect to see rather than what's actually there. This predictive nature of consciousness is tremendously useful. It allows us to quickly make sense of complex situations and respond appropriately. But it also means that our perception of reality is always, to some degree, a construction of our minds rather than a direct apprehension of reality as it is. So how can we use this understanding to perceive reality more clearly? One powerful approach is to cultivate what Zen Buddhists call beginner's mind. This is a state of open, non-judgmental awareness, free from preconceptions and expectations. It's an attitude of seeing each moment as if for the first time, with fresh eyes and an open mind. Practicing beginner's mind doesn't mean discarding all our knowledge and experience. Rather, it means holding our knowledge lightly, remaining open to new information and perspectives. It means recognizing that our current understanding, no matter how sophisticated, is always limited and partial. Another powerful practice is to cultivate awareness of our own thought processes. By observing our thoughts and perceptions without getting caught up in them, we can start to see the ways in which our minds are constantly interpreting and constructing our experience of reality. This kind of meta-awareness, awareness of awareness itself, is a key aspect of many meditation practices. As we develop this capacity, we begin to see that our thoughts, perceptions, and beliefs are not solid, unchanging realities, but rather fleeting appearances in consciousness. This shift in perspective can be profoundly liberating. Instead of being caught up in the content of our experience, our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions, we can rest in the open, spacious awareness that holds all experience. This awareness, many spiritual traditions suggest, is our true nature, the deepest reality of who we are. From this perspective, the question, can our mind see true reality, takes on a new dimension. Instead of trying to perceive an external reality with our minds, we turn our attention to the nature of awareness itself. We investigate the knowing quality of our experience, the consciousness that is aware of all appearances. This investigation leads to some profound questions. What is the nature of this awareness? Where does it come from? Does it have limits? Is my individual awareness separate from the awareness of others, or are they fundamentally the same? As we contemplate these questions, we may begin to sense that our individual consciousness is not separate from the world around us, but is intimately connected to all of existence. We may glimpse a deeper reality in which subject and object, self and world are not two separate things, but different aspects of a single, unified whole. This non-dual perspective is at the heart of many spiritual traditions. It suggests that the deepest truth of reality is not something that can be seen or perceived by the mind, because the mind itself is an appearance within this deeper reality. True reality from this view can only be known through direct, non-conceptual experience. But even if we accept this non-dual perspective intellectually, most of us still live most of our lives from the perspective of a separate self interacting with an external world. We still have to navigate the practical realities of daily life, make decisions, interact with others. So how can we integrate this deeper understanding into our everyday experience? One approach is to cultivate a dual awareness, maintaining our practical, everyday perspective while simultaneously holding an awareness of the deeper, non-dual reality. This is similar to how we can be aware that we're dreaming while in the midst of a dream. We participate fully in the dream experience while also knowing that it's not ultimately real. In practice, this might mean going about our daily activities with full engagement, making decisions, interacting with others, experiencing the full range of human emotions, while simultaneously maintaining an awareness of the deeper reality that underlies all these appearances. This dual awareness can profoundly transform our experience of life. It allows us to engage fully in the world while holding our experiences lightly, without grasping or aversion. It gives us a sense of spaciousness and freedom, even in the midst of challenging circumstances. From this perspective, every moment of our lives becomes an opportunity for awakening, for seeing beyond the surface appearance of things to the deeper reality that underlies all experience. Every interaction, every sensation, every thought becomes a gateway to the infinite. But this understanding isn't something that can be grasped intellectually or achieved through effort. It's more like a recognition of what's already true, a relaxing into our natural state. It's less about trying to see reality clearly, and more about letting go of our habitual patterns of perception and interpretation that obscure the clarity that's already present. This letting go is not a passive resignation, but an active openness. It's a willingness to meet each moment freshly, without preconceptions or expectations. It's an embrace of uncertainty, a recognition that reality is always more than our concepts can capture. As we cultivate this open, receptive awareness, we may find that our perception of reality becomes increasingly vivid and alive. Colors may seem brighter, sounds clearer, sensations more intense. This isn't because the world has changed, but because we're experiencing it more directly, with less interference from our habitual thought patterns. We may also find that our sense of self becomes more fluid and open. Instead of feeling like a fixed, separate entity, we may experience ourselves as a flowing, ever-changing process, intimately connected with the world around us. Our joys and sorrows, our triumphs and failures, may be felt just as deeply, but they're held in a larger context of open awareness. This shift in perception can have profound implications for how we live our lives. When we recognize the constructed nature of our ordinary perception, we naturally hold our beliefs and opinions more lightly. We become more open to different perspectives, more willing to question our assumptions, more able to adapt to changing circumstances. We may find that our actions become more spontaneous and authentic, arising naturally in response to each situation rather than being driven by fixed ideas or habitual patterns. Our relationships may become more open and genuine as we relate to others from a place of presence rather than through the filter of our mental projections. This doesn't mean that we abandon discernment or critical thinking. On the contrary, By recognizing the limitations of our ordinary perception, we can engage in clearer, more nuanced thinking. We can hold multiple perspectives simultaneously, seeing the partial truth in different viewpoints without needing to cling to any one perspective as the whole truth. In this way, our inquiry into the nature of perception and reality isn't just a philosophical exercise. It's a practical path to living with greater wisdom, compassion, and freedom. By questioning our habitual ways of seeing and interpreting the world, we open ourselves to a richer, more nuanced experience of life.